My 4 adult children invited me to what I thought was a birthday celebration at my favorite restaurant. Instead, they staged an intervention, demanding I hand over my business and move into a retirement home because I was too old to make rational decisions. My oldest son even brought a lawyer to witness my signature on transfer documents they'd prepared in advance. They thought my age made me weak and malleable. Instead, they were about to learn that some people get more strategic with experience, not less capable. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, subscribe to see how this ambush backfired in ways they never imagined. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from around the world. Now, the story begins. The invitation for Sunday dinner at Romano's came from my daughter Sarah, delivered with the kind of warm enthusiasm that had made me believe my 4 adult children were finally coordinating family gatherings that honored the relationships we'd built through decades of supporting each other's personal and professional development. "Dad, we want to celebrate your 72nd birthday properly this year," Sarah had said during the phone call that had arrived 2 weeks before my actual birthday. "All 4 of us will be there, and we've made reservations at Romano's for the private dining room." The private dining room at Romano's had been the setting for numerous family celebrations over the years, including graduations, promotions, and milestone anniversaries that had marked our family's growth and success through 3 generations of business ownership and community involvement. My children had always been thoughtful about birthday celebrations, understanding that family gatherings had become more important to me since my wife Catherine had died 4 years earlier, leaving me with the kind of loneliness that only family relationships could address effectively. Sarah, my oldest at 46, had developed into a successful marketing director at a regional advertising firm. Michael, 44, managed a portfolio of investment properties that generated substantial passive income. Jennifer, 41, worked as a hospital administrator overseeing budgets for a 300-bed medical facility. David, my youngest at 39, had built a thriving law practice specializing in estate planning and business succession. Each of my children had achieved professional success that made me proud, while developing the kind of financial independence that suggested they'd inherited my work ethic and business judgment, rather than the entitlement that sometimes affected wealthy families' second-generation development. But over the past year, I'd noticed subtle changes in my children's attitudes toward my continued management of Harrison Industries, the manufacturing company I'd built from a small machine shop into a regional business employing 230 people with annual revenue of $43 million. The changes had been expressed through increased questions about my business decisions, suggestions about succession planning that seemed premature for someone in excellent health, and conversations about retirement that felt more like pressure than casual family planning discussions. "Dad, don't you think 72 is a good age to start thinking about slowing down?" Michael had asked during one of our monthly family dinners. "You've worked hard for 50 years. Maybe it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor." Slowing down and enjoying the fruits of my labor. Michael's suggestions had sounded caring and appropriate, but they'd been accompanied by specific recommendations about transferring business management responsibilities to professional managers or family members who could handle daily operations. "Dad, estate planning becomes more important as we age," David had mentioned during another family gathering. "We should make sure your business succession plans are current and legally protected." David's comments about estate planning had been delivered with professional expertise, but they'd focused more on transferring business ownership than on preserving business operations or ensuring continued success of the company that employed hundreds of people and supported their families. Sarah and Jennifer had been less direct but equally persistent in their suggestions that I should consider reducing my business responsibilities while focusing more on personal interests and family relationships that would provide fulfillment during my retirement years. The cumulative effect of my children's suggestions had been subtle pressure to transfer business control while I was still healthy enough to enjoy retirement, but the timing had seemed suspicious given that Harrison Industries was performing better than ever, and my personal health remained excellent. I'd begun wondering whether my children's concern about my retirement was motivated by genuine care for my welfare, or by their desire to gain control of business assets that would provide them with financial security and inheritance benefits they hadn't earned through their own professional achievements. The birthday dinner invitation had seemed like an opportunity to clarify whether my children's retirement suggestions reflected appropriate family planning or systematic pressure to transfer business ownership for their benefit rather than mine. Sunday evening, I arrived at Romano's expecting to celebrate my 72nd birthday with family members who appreciated my continued vitality and business success. But the atmosphere in the private dining room suggested something more serious than birthday festivities. My 4 children were already seated around the table with expressions that reflected nervousness and determination rather than celebratory enthusiasm. The table settings included legal documents rather than birthday gifts, and the overall mood suggested business meeting rather than family celebration. "Dad, thank you for coming tonight," Sarah said as I took my seat, her tone carrying formality that was inconsistent with casual family gatherings. "We wanted to talk with you about some important family matters." Important family matters rather than birthday celebration. Sarah's introduction confirmed that the dinner invitation had been designed to facilitate serious conversation rather than honoring my birthday through family gathering and shared celebration. "We've been discussing your future and the business succession planning that becomes necessary as family patriarch transitions from active management to retirement and legacy preservation," Michael added, using language that sounded rehearsed and coordinated rather than spontaneous family concern. Business succession planning and legacy preservation. Michael's comments suggested that my children had been meeting independently to develop strategies for encouraging my retirement and transferring business control to their management or oversight. David placed legal documents on the table with the professional efficiency of someone who'd prepared comprehensive paperwork for business transactions that had been planned and coordinated in advance. "Dad, we've prepared documentation that would facilitate smooth transition of business ownership while ensuring your financial security and removing the stress of daily management responsibilities," David explained. The realization that my children had coordinated legal documentation for business ownership transfer hit me with the devastating recognition that the birthday dinner had been an ambush designed to pressure me into retiring through systematic family intervention. My 4 adult children had conspired to use my birthday celebration as leverage for extracting business ownership transfer that would benefit them financially while removing my purpose and identity as the founder and leader of Harrison Industries. The legal documents David had prepared represented systematic planning to acquire my business through family pressure disguised as concern for my welfare and retirement planning, rather than genuine interest in my health and happiness during my later years. Some discoveries about family loyalty and business relationships can only be made when people reveal their true motivations through coordinated actions that exploit emotional occasions for systematic manipulation designed to benefit themselves rather than the family members they claim to be protecting. My children were about to learn whether their intervention had been planned against someone whose age had diminished his capabilities, or whether they'd underestimated the strategic thinking and preparation of someone who'd built a successful business through decades of anticipating and responding to challenges from people who wanted to control his assets. The legal documents David had arranged on the table represented comprehensive business transfer agreements that would have given my 4 children joint ownership of Harrison Industries while establishing me as chairman emeritus with advisory responsibilities but no decision-making authority. "Dad, we've structured this transition to protect your interests while ensuring business continuity," David explained as he reviewed documents that had obviously been prepared with significant legal expertise and advanced planning. The transfer agreements included provisions for my continued salary, office space, and ceremonial involvement in business operations, but all substantive management authority would be distributed among my children according to their individual strengths and professional backgrounds. Sarah would assume responsibility for marketing and public relations, Michael would manage facilities and real estate, Jennifer would oversee human resources and employee benefits, and David would handle legal compliance and financial oversight. "Dad, this division of responsibilities ensures that Harrison Industries continues operating successfully while removing the burden of daily management from your shoulders," Sarah said, presenting the ownership transfer as relief from stress rather than systematic removal of my business control. The coordination required for developing such comprehensive legal documentation demonstrated that my children had been planning this intervention for months while maintaining the pretense of casual family concern about my retirement and estate planning. "We've also identified an excellent retirement community that would provide you with social activities and healthcare services appropriate for someone your age," Jennifer added, presenting photographs of Sunset Manor, an upscale assisted living facility that offered independent apartments with dining and medical services. Sunset Manor represented exactly the kind of institutional care that I'd been hoping to avoid through continued health maintenance and active business involvement. that provided purpose and social interaction with people who respected my experience and judgment. Dad, Sunset Manor has golf courses, social clubs, and residents who share your interests and background, Michael said, describing amenities that were designed to appeal to people who'd accepted that their productive lives had ended and that institutional care was preferable to independent living. The suggestion that I should move to assisted living while transferring business ownership to my children revealed the comprehensive nature of their planning to remove me from both business and independent living while gaining control of assets I'd spent 50 years building. But the most devastating aspect of my children's intervention was the realization that they'd been coordinating their retirement pressure while evaluating my mental competence and decision-making capacity to determine whether I would resist their business transfer demands. Dad, we've been concerned about some of your recent business decisions, David said, presenting documentation that questioned my judgment about equipment purchases, employee hiring, and client relationships that my children apparently viewed as evidence of declining competence. My children had been systematically documenting my business decisions as evidence of diminished capacity that would justify transferring business ownership for my protection, rather than acknowledging that Harrison Industries was performing better than ever under my continued leadership. The Henderson contract negotiations took longer than usual, Sarah noted, and your decision to expand the machining department seemed impulsive rather than based on comprehensive market analysis. The Henderson contract and machining department expansion had been successful business decisions that had increased revenue and improved operational efficiency, but my children were interpreting longer negotiation timelines and equipment investments as evidence of poor judgment rather than careful business development. Dad, we love you and want to protect you from making decisions that could damage the business you've worked so hard to build, Michael said, framing their intervention as protection rather than systematic acquisition of business assets they hadn't contributed to developing. The language of protection and concern disguised their systematic planning to gain control of Harrison Industries while removing my independence and decision-making authority through coordinated family pressure that exploited my emotional connections to them. We've scheduled a meeting with the administrators at Sunset Manor for Thursday morning, Jennifer said, presenting the assisted living consultation as confirmed appointment rather than optional consideration. My children had been making decisions about my living arrangements and business ownership without my input or consent, treating me as someone whose competence and preferences were irrelevant to plans they developed for managing my retirement and their inheritance. But David's legal documents required my signature to complete the business ownership transfer, and my children's intervention depended on my voluntary cooperation with retirement plans I hadn't requested or desired. Dad, we need you to sign these ownership transfer documents tonight, David said, presenting signature requirements as immediate necessity rather than decision that required careful consideration and independent legal review. The pressure for immediate signature confirmed that my children's intervention had been designed to extract business ownership before I could resist their demands or seek independent advice about the legal and financial implications of their proposed business transfer. We brought witnesses to ensure the transfer documents are legally valid, Sarah added, gesturing toward two people I hadn't noticed when I'd entered the dining room. Witnesses for legal document execution. My children had prepared for every aspect of business ownership transfer except my potential refusal to cooperate with retirement plans that benefited them rather than honoring my preferences about continued business involvement and independent living. The coordinated nature of my children's intervention revealed systematic planning that had been occurring for months while they'd maintained pretenses of family concern and casual retirement suggestions that had actually been preparation for systematic business acquisition. Their birthday dinner invitation had been designed to exploit my emotional expectations about family celebration while creating pressure for immediate decision-making about business ownership and living arrangements that would benefit them financially while removing my purpose and independence. Dad, we hope you understand that this transition is necessary for protecting your legacy and ensuring business continuity, Michael said, using language about legacy protection to disguise systematic acquisition of assets they wanted to control. My children's systematic intervention had revealed their true motivations for encouraging my retirement, while demonstrating that they viewed Harrison Industries as inheritance they deserved rather than business I'd built through decades of work and careful management. But their intervention had also provided clarity about their character and their perception of our family relationships, enabling me to respond to their systematic manipulation with strategies they hadn't anticipated during their months of planning business acquisition, disguised as retirement assistance. Some lessons about family loyalty and business ownership can only be taught to people who attempt systematic manipulation of elderly family members, while underestimating the strategic thinking and preparation of someone who survived decades of business challenges through careful planning and decisive action. My children were about to discover whether their intervention had been planned against someone whose age had diminished his capabilities, or whether they'd attempted to manipulate someone who'd been anticipating their systematic acquisition attempts and preparing comprehensive responses to their coordinated family pressure. I examined David's legal documents for several minutes while my 4 children waited anxiously for signature that would complete their systematic acquisition of business ownership through coordinated family intervention disguised as retirement assistance and estate planning. The documents were comprehensive and professionally prepared, transferring complete ownership of Harrison Industries to joint family management while providing me with ceremonial titles and financial benefits that would ensure comfortable retirement without meaningful business involvement. "These are very thorough legal documents," I said finally, setting the papers aside without signing anything. "David, you've obviously invested significant time and legal expertise in preparing business transfer agreements." David's confident expression began to shift as he processed that my tone suggested analysis rather than gratitude for their systematic planning to remove my business responsibilities and decision-making authority. "Dad, the documents protect your interests while ensuring smooth business transition," David said, maintaining his professional demeanor while clearly hoping I would proceed with signature rather than continuing legal document review. "Sarah, how long have you been planning this intervention?" I asked, studying my oldest daughter's expression for signs of discomfort about being questioned directly regarding their coordinated family manipulation. "Dad, we've been discussing your retirement for several months," Sarah replied carefully. "We wanted to make sure we had comprehensive plans before approaching you with transition recommendations." Several months of discussion about my retirement while coordinating legal documentation and assisted living arrangements without my knowledge or input. Sarah's admission confirmed that their birthday dinner had been the culmination of systematic planning rather than spontaneous family concern. "Michael, what specific business decisions prompted your concerns about my competence?" I asked, testing whether Michael could provide legitimate examples of poor judgment or whether their intervention was based on assumptions about age-related decline rather than actual performance problems. "Dad, it's not about competence," Michael said quickly. "It's about protecting you from stress and ensuring you can enjoy retirement without business responsibilities." Michael's defensive response suggested that their intervention was based more on their desire to control business assets than on documented evidence of declining performance or poor decision-making that would justify systematic removal of my business authority. "Jennifer, what research did you conduct about Sunset Manor before scheduling appointments without my consent?" I asked, testing whether Jennifer had actually investigated assisted living options that matched my preferences or whether she'd selected facilities that served their timeline rather than my needs. "Dad, Sunset Manor has excellent ratings and provides comprehensive services for people your age," Jennifer replied, avoiding direct acknowledgement that she'd made decisions about my living arrangements without consulting me about preferences or requirements. Jennifer's evasive response confirmed that their assisted living recommendations had been based on their convenience rather than careful evaluation of options that would honor my independence and personal preferences about retirement lifestyle. "I want to be clear about something," I said, standing up from the table with the kind of authority that had served me well during 50 years of business negotiations and family leadership. "I'm not signing these documents tonight or any other night." My children's shocked expressions revealed that they'd assumed my cooperation with their systematic intervention was inevitable, rather than recognizing that I retained the independence and decision-making capacity to refuse their coordinated manipulation. "Dad, we're trying to help you," Sarah protested, her voice carrying desperation as she processed that their months of planning had failed to achieve the immediate business ownership transfer they'd been expecting. "Sarah, if you wanted to help me, you would have discussed retirement options with me directly rather than coordinating legal documentation and assisted living arrangements without my knowledge or consent," I replied. "This intervention demonstrates that you view me as an obstacle to your inheritance rather than as your father whose preferences and capabilities deserve respect and consideration," I continued. My children's systematic planning had revealed their true motivations while providing me with clarity about their character and their perception of our family relationships that would guide my response to their coordinated manipulation. "Dad, please reconsider," David said, his professional composure cracking as he understood that his legal documentation had been ineffective against someone who refused to be pressured into decisions that benefited his children rather than honoring his own preferences. "David, I'll reconsider when you and your siblings demonstrate that you're interested in my welfare rather than systematically acquiring business assets through family pressure disguised as retirement assistance," I said. The birthday dinner that was supposed to celebrate my 72nd year had instead revealed that my 4 adult children viewed Harrison Industries as inheritance they deserved rather than business I'd built through decades of work and careful management. But my children's intervention had also provided me with comprehensive understanding of their motivations and methods, enabling me to respond to their systematic manipulation with strategies they hadn't anticipated during their months of planning business acquisition. The evening that had begun with their coordinated pressure for immediate business transfer would end with my clear refusal to cooperate with retirement plans that served their interests, rather than honoring my preferences about continued business involvement and independent living. Some lessons about family loyalty and systematic manipulation can only be taught to people who underestimate the strategic thinking and determination of someone who's built successful businesses through decades of responding to challenges from people who wanted to control his decisions and assets. My children had revealed their true character through coordinated intervention that would guide every aspect of my future relationship with them, including decisions about business succession and inheritance that they'd assumed would automatically benefit them regardless of their behavior toward me. The education about consequences for systematic family manipulation was about to begin, delivered by someone who'd been anticipating their coordination and preparing responses that would demonstrate the difference between honoring family relationships and exploiting them for personal financial gain. The stunned silence that followed my refusal to sign their business transfer documents lasted long enough for my children to process that their coordinated intervention had failed to achieve the immediate results they'd been planning for months. But their shock was about to deepen when they learned that their systematic manipulation hadn't been as secretive as they'd assumed, and that their father hadn't been as oblivious to their coordination as their intervention strategy had required. "I want to share something with all of you," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket to retrieve documents that would transform their understanding of how much I'd known about their planning and how comprehensively I'd been preparing for their attempted business acquisition. I placed a thick folder on the table beside David's legal documents, opening it to reveal copies of emails, text messages, and recorded phone conversations that documented their coordination over the past 6 months. "Sarah, here's your email to Michael dated March 15th discussing strategies for convincing me to transfer business ownership," I said, showing them the first piece of evidence that would demonstrate how thoroughly I'd been monitoring their systematic planning. Sarah's face went completely white as she recognized her own written words about my alleged declining competence and their need to act quickly before Dad becomes more resistant to retirement suggestions. "Michael, here's your text message to Jennifer from April 3rd describing your research into assisted living facilities that would keep Dad occupied while we run the business," I continued, presenting documentation that revealed their true motivations for retirement community recommendations. Michael stared at his own text messages with growing horror as he understood that his private communications about controlling business operations had been accessible to me throughout their months of coordination. "Jennifer, here are your phone conversations with David about legal strategies for business ownership transfer, including discussions about documenting my alleged mental decline as justification for family intervention," I said. Jennifer's professional composure collapsed completely as she processed that her confidential discussions about my competence and their inheritance strategies had been recorded and documented systematically. David's legal expertise made him the first to understand the full implications of my documentation, recognizing that I'd been conducting comprehensive surveillance of their coordination while they'd been assuming complete privacy for their business acquisition planning. "Dad, how did you get access to our private communications?" David asked, his voice carrying the shock of someone discovering that his legal planning had been under observation by the target of his systematic manipulation. "David, I've been monitoring your coordination since February," I replied. "When 4 successful adults begin meeting secretly while asking detailed questions about business operations and estate planning, careful observation becomes necessary." I'd been monitoring their coordination for 4 months, documenting their systematic planning while allowing them to proceed with intervention strategies that would reveal their true character and motivations for encouraging my retirement. "You hired someone to spy on us?" Sarah asked, her indignation about privacy violations revealing that she still didn't understand how her systematic manipulation had justified comprehensive surveillance of her activities. "Sarah, I hired security professionals to document threats to my business and personal welfare," I replied. "Your coordination represented exactly the kind of threat that required professional investigation." The security investigation had been conducted by Peterson Security, a firm that specialized in corporate espionage and family asset protection, providing me with comprehensive documentation of my children's planning while they'd remained unaware that their intervention was being monitored and recorded. "The investigation confirmed that your retirement suggestions weren't motivated by concern for my welfare," I continued. "You've been planning systematic acquisition of business assets while preparing legal justification for removing my decision-making authority. But my documentation of their coordination was only the first aspect of comprehensive preparation that would demonstrate how thoroughly I'd been anticipating and planning responses to their systematic manipulation. I want you to meet someone who's been helping me understand your coordination and develop appropriate responses," I said, gesturing toward the restaurant's private entrance where 3 people had been waiting for my signal. Margaret Chen, the senior partner at Chen & Associates Legal Services, entered the dining room accompanied by Dr. Robert Martinez, a forensic psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations, and Detective Patricia Williams from the Financial Crimes Unit. My children watched in growing alarm as 3 professionals approached our table, clearly understanding that my preparation for their intervention had been far more comprehensive than their planning to acquire my business assets. "Margaret has been reviewing David's legal documents and your coordination for potential elder abuse and financial exploitation charges," I explained as Margaret took a seat at our table. Margaret Chen's presence transformed the dinner from family intervention to potential criminal investigation with legal expertise that far exceeded David's estate planning experience while focusing specifically on protecting elderly people from systematic family manipulation. "Dr. Martinez has been evaluating my mental competence and decision-making capacity to address any claims about age-related decline that might justify your business transfer demands," I continued. "Dr. Martinez's professional evaluation would provide definitive documentation of my mental competence, eliminating any possibility that my children could claim medical justification for their systematic intervention or business ownership transfer." Detective Williams's presence indicated that my children's coordination had been evaluated for criminal activity rather than simple family estate planning, suggesting that their systematic manipulation might constitute financial crimes rather than aggressive inheritance discussions. "Detective Williams has been investigating your coordination for elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and systematic financial exploitation," I said. The investigation had revealed that my children's intervention met criteria for criminal prosecution under elder abuse statutes, transforming their family pressure into potential felony charges that carried significant prison sentences. "Your systematic coordination to acquire business assets through family intervention has been documented comprehensively," I continued. "Every email, text message, phone conversation, and meeting has been recorded and analyzed for criminal activity. My children's months of careful planning had been under professional surveillance that had documented not only their coordination, but also their specific statements about my competence, their motivations for business acquisition, and their strategies for overcoming my potential resistance to retirement." "Margaret, would you explain the legal implications of their coordination?" I asked. "Systematic planning to acquire elderly family members' assets through false claims about mental decline constitutes elder abuse under federal statutes," Margaret explained. "The documentation shows premeditation and coordination that elevates this beyond simple family disputes." Federal elder abuse charges. My children's systematic intervention had escalated their legal exposure from family disagreements to federal prosecution that could result in prison sentences and financial penalties that would destroy their professional reputations permanently. "Dr. Martinez, would you share your evaluation of my mental competence?" I asked. "Mr. Harrison demonstrates exceptional mental acuity, sound business judgment, and decision-making capacity that's well above average for someone his age," Dr. Martinez reported. "There's no medical justification for claims about declining competence or impaired judgment." The professional competency evaluation had eliminated any possibility that my children could claim medical necessity for their business transfer demands, confirming that their intervention was motivated by greed rather than legitimate concern for my welfare. Some revelations about systematic family manipulation can only be delivered by people who've been monitoring criminal coordination while preparing comprehensive responses that ensure appropriate consequences for elder abuse, disguised as retirement assistance and estate planning. My children were about to discover that their systematic planning had been anticipated and documented by professionals who specialized in protecting elderly people from exactly the kind of family exploitation they'd been coordinating for months. Detective Williams reviewed the documentation that had been compiled over 4 months of investigating my children's coordination, confirming that their systematic planning met federal criteria for elder abuse prosecution that would ensure comprehensive criminal consequences. Sarah, Michael, Jennifer, and David Harrison, you're all subjects of federal investigation for elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and systematic financial exploitation, Detective Williams announced. The federal investigation had been building criminal cases against each of my children based on their individual contributions to coordinated intervention designed to acquire business assets through false claims about my mental competence and decision-making capacity. Your private communications document systematic planning to acquire your father's business through family pressure while preparing legal justification based on fabricated concerns about his mental decline, Detective Williams continued. My children's months of coordination had provided federal investigators with comprehensive evidence of premeditated elder abuse that demonstrated criminal intent rather than genuine family concern about retirement planning and business succession. Margaret Chen opened her legal portfolio to present documentation that would transform my children's intervention from failed family pressure into comprehensive legal consequences that would affect their professional licenses, business relationships, and financial stability permanently. I've prepared elder abuse reports that will be filed with professional licensing boards for each of your careers, Margaret explained. Systematic elder abuse disqualifies people from maintaining licenses in healthcare administration, legal practice, property management, and marketing consultation. Professional license revocation. My children's systematic intervention would destroy their career prospects while ensuring that their elder abuse was documented in professional records that would prevent future employment in their chosen fields. Sarah, your marketing license will be revoked based on documented elder abuse and systematic family exploitation, Margaret continued. Advertising firms cannot employ people with elder abuse records. Sarah's marketing career would be destroyed permanently by professional licensing consequences that reflected her participation in systematic family manipulation designed to acquire business assets through coordinated intervention. Michael, your real estate licenses will be suspended pending criminal investigation completion, Margaret said. Property management requires trustworthiness that's incompatible with elder abuse convictions. Michael's investment property business would collapse when professional licensing revocation prevented him from managing real estate transactions or maintaining client relationships that required demonstrated integrity and reliability. Jennifer, hospital administration requires security clearances that will be revoked when elder abuse charges are filed, Margaret explained. Healthcare facilities cannot employ people who've been convicted of systematic exploitation of vulnerable populations. Jennifer's hospital career would end when security clearance revocation prevented her from accessing patient information or managing healthcare budgets that required demonstrated trustworthiness and ethical behavior. David, legal practice licenses are automatically suspended when attorneys are charged with elder abuse, Margaret said. Bar associations have zero tolerance for systematic exploitation of elderly family members by people who are supposed to understand legal ethics. David's law practice would be destroyed immediately when Bar Association investigations revealed his systematic planning to acquire business assets through coordinated family manipulation that violated every principle of legal ethics and professional responsibility. But the professional consequences were only the beginning of comprehensive penalties that would follow my children for years beyond their criminal prosecution and professional license revocation. Dr. Martinez, would you explain the psychological evaluation findings? I asked. Your children demonstrate systematic patterns of financial exploitation and family manipulation that indicate personality disorders incompatible with positions of trust or authority, Dr. Martinez reported. The psychological evaluation had documented personality traits that would prevent my children from obtaining employment in healthcare, education, financial services, or any other profession that required background checks and character verification. "Detective Williams, what's the timeline for criminal prosecution?" Margaret asked. "Federal charges will be filed Monday morning," Detective Williams replied. "Elder abuse prosecution typically results in federal prison sentences of 5 to 10 years, plus complete asset forfeiture and restitution requirements." Federal prison sentences and asset forfeiture. My children's systematic intervention would result in criminal penalties that would consume their personal assets while ensuring that their elder abuse faced consequences that reflected the premeditated nature of their coordination. But the most devastating consequence of my children's intervention would be the permanent destruction of our family relationships and their exclusion from business succession planning that they'd assumed would automatically benefit them regardless of their behavior toward me. "I want to be clear about something," I said, addressing my 4 children directly. "Your systematic coordination has revealed your true character and your perception of our family relationships. You view Harrison Industries as inheritance you deserve rather than business. I built through decades of work and careful management," I continued. "You see me as obstacle to your financial gain rather than father whose welfare and preferences deserve respect." My children's systematic intervention had demonstrated that they valued business assets more than family relationships, while treating me as someone whose competence and independence were irrelevant to their inheritance planning. "Effective immediately, none of you will inherit any portion of Harrison Industries," I announced. "The business will be transferred to my employees through profit-sharing arrangements that reward people who've contributed to its success." Employee ownership of Harrison Industries would ensure that business operations continued successfully while providing financial benefits to people who'd earned them through years of dedicated work and professional competence. "Your children, my grandchildren, will be provided for through educational trusts that ensure they receive college funding and career development support," I continued. "But you will receive nothing beyond what you've earned through your own professional achievements." The educational trusts would protect my grandchildren from their parents' poor judgment while ensuring that the next generation received opportunities for education and career development that weren't dependent on their parents' systematic elder abuse and family manipulation. "Margaret, please proceed with filing criminal charges and professional licensing reports," I said. The comprehensive legal consequences would ensure that my children faced criminal prosecution for elder abuse while losing professional licenses and career prospects that would have provided them with financial independence and social status. But the intervention that had been designed to acquire my business assets had instead resulted in their complete exclusion from inheritance, while ensuring that their systematic manipulation faced criminal penalties and professional consequences that would follow them permanently. "Detective Williams, please proceed with federal charges," I said. My children's birthday dinner ambush had transformed into federal criminal investigation that would ensure comprehensive consequences for systematic elder abuse, while demonstrating that family relationships require mutual respect rather than coordinated manipulation for financial gain. Some lessons about family loyalty and elder respect can only be taught through comprehensive consequences that match the scope of systematic manipulation, while ensuring that people who exploit elderly family members face criminal prosecution and professional destruction that reflects their violation of basic family trust and social responsibility. My children had learned that coordinating systematic intervention against someone they'd underestimated would result in consequences that extended far beyond failed business acquisition, to include permanent destruction of their careers, relationships, and inheritance prospects. The federal prosecution of my 4 children began 3 months after their failed intervention, providing comprehensive public documentation of their systematic elder abuse and coordinated attempt to acquire business assets through family manipulation disguised as retirement assistance. The defendants systematically planned to acquire their father's business through coordinated intervention based on false claims about mental decline, federal prosecutor Janet Stevens explained during opening statements. "This represents premeditated elder abuse rather than family estate planning." The evidence presented during the trial included months of recorded communications, professional competency evaluations, and expert testimony about systematic financial exploitation that demonstrated criminal intent rather than legitimate concern about my retirement and business succession. Sarah received 5 years in federal prison plus 7 years supervised probation. Michael was sentenced to 6 years in prison plus asset forfeiture that consumed his real estate investment portfolio. Jennifer received 4 years in prison plus permanent exclusion from healthcare employment. David was sentenced to 8 years in prison plus disbarment that ended his legal career permanently. The federal sentences reflected the systematic nature of their coordination, while ensuring that elder abuse faced consequences that would prevent future exploitation of vulnerable family members through similar family manipulation and business acquisition schemes. But the criminal convictions were only one aspect of comprehensive consequences that had permanently destroyed my children's professional reputations, financial prospects, and social relationships within our community where their elder abuse had become widely known. Harrison Industries continued operating successfully under employee ownership arrangements that distributed business profits among people who'd contributed to company growth and operational efficiency over years of dedicated professional service. Mr. Harrison, employee ownership has increased productivity by 23% while improving workplace satisfaction and company loyalty, reported Jennifer Walsh, our new employee elected president, who'd been promoted from production management to executive leadership. Employee ownership had transformed Harrison Industries into a more successful operation than it had been under my individual ownership, demonstrating that business succession based on merit, rather than family inheritance, produced better results for employees, customers, and community economic development. 2 years after my children's conviction, I established the Harrison Foundation for Elder Protection, using personal assets that had originally been designated for family inheritance to fund education about detecting and preventing systematic elder abuse targeting vulnerable family members. Mr. Harrison, your foundation has educated over 800 families about recognizing coordinated manipulation and has prevented dozens of elder abuse cases through early intervention and professional assistance, the foundation director reported. The foundation provided exactly the kind of elder protection education that could have helped other families recognize systematic manipulation before it escalated to coordinated intervention and business acquisition attempts through family pressure and false competency claims. 3 years after their intervention, I received letters from my children in federal prison written as part of court-mandated victim reconciliation programs that required acknowledgement of elder abuse and attempts to make amends with family members they'd systematically exploited. Dad, Sarah wrote, I know I can't undo the damage we caused to our family relationships, but I want you to know that prison has taught me something important about the difference between loving family members and exploiting them for financial gain. Sarah's letter acknowledged that their intervention had violated family trust while demonstrating character deficits that had made systematic elder abuse seem acceptable when motivated by desire for business inheritance and financial security. Michael's letter included similar acknowledgments of systematic manipulation and expressions of remorse for coordinating family intervention that had exploited my emotional connections to them while attempting to acquire business assets through coordinated pressure and false competency claims. I used our family relationship as leverage for business acquisition rather than honoring the love and support you provided throughout our lives, Michael wrote. We turned family loyalty into criminal opportunity. Jennifer and David's letters revealed their understanding that systematic elder abuse had destroyed family relationships permanently while demonstrating that their professional expertise in healthcare and legal services had made their manipulation more sophisticated and more damaging to family trust. But letters from federal prison were different from developing the character that would have prevented systematic elder abuse and coordinated family manipulation, and I remained convinced that my children's primary regret was being caught rather than genuine understanding of their violation of family relationships and elder respect. 4 years after their conviction, my grandchildren began receiving educational support through foundation trusts that ensured their college funding and career development while protecting them from their parents' poor judgment and criminal behavior. Grandpa, thank you for making sure we could go to college despite what our parents did, my granddaughter Emma said during one of our regular visits. We understand that they made terrible mistakes, but that doesn't reflect who we want to become. My grandchildren's educational success and character development demonstrated that the next generation could learn from their parents' systematic elder abuse while developing respect for family relationships and professional ethics that would prevent similar manipulation and exploitation. 5 years after their failed intervention, Harrison Industries had become a regional leader in employee-owned manufacturing while providing career development and profit-sharing opportunities that honored workers' contributions rather than family inheritance expectations. The business succession that my children had attempted to acquire through systematic manipulation had instead been transferred to people who'd earned ownership through years of professional competence and dedication to company success and community economic development. My children's systematic elder abuse had been transformed into comprehensive education about family protection and business ethics, while ensuring that their criminal behavior resulted in permanent consequences that reflected their violation of basic family trust and social responsibility. The Harrison Foundation for Elder Protection had grown into a comprehensive program serving over 1,200 families while providing law enforcement training about detecting systematic manipulation and coordinated family intervention targeting vulnerable elderly people. The foundation honored my late wife Catherine's memory while ensuring that elder abuse prevention became part of her legacy through education that protected vulnerable families from systematic exploitation and financial manipulation disguised as family concern and retirement assistance. 6 years after my children's conviction, I remained active in Harrison Industries' oversight while enjoying the kind of retirement that balanced continued business involvement with personal interests and community service that honored my professional achievements and family legacy. The birthday dinner that had been designed to force my retirement through systematic family manipulation had instead revealed my children's character while enabling me to protect business operations and elder rights through comprehensive consequences that ensured systematic abuse faced appropriate criminal and professional penalties. Some people survive family betrayal by transforming systematic manipulation into education that protects other vulnerable families while ensuring that criminal behavior faces consequences that reflect its violation of basic trust and social responsibility. My children had learned that systematic elder abuse carries consequences that extend far beyond failed business acquisition, to include permanent destruction of family relationships, professional careers, and inheritance prospects, while providing education that prevents future exploitation of vulnerable elderly people. The education had been expensive but necessary, worth every relationship sacrificed and every inheritance redirected to teach it properly. I hope this story touched you, especially those protecting elderly family members from systematic manipulation and coordinated intervention designed to acquire assets through false claims about mental competence and decision-making capacity. If this story moved you, please support our channel with a like and subscribe for more stories about elder protection, family manipulation, and the courage to fight back when family members coordinate systematic abuse disguised as retirement assistance and estate planning. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, or let me know where you're listening from around the world. These stories about family loyalty, elder protection, and professional accountability connect people across all communities and cultures. Thank you for joining this journey through systematic family betrayal, comprehensive consequences, and the wisdom that comes from understanding the difference between honoring family relationships and exploiting them for personal financial gain. Until next time, remember, the most valuable lesson isn't about money or business succession, but about recognizing when family concern becomes systematic manipulation and having the strength to ensure that elder abuse faces consequences that protect vulnerable people while preserving the dignity and independence they've earned through lifetime achievements.